Hi everyone. You'll notice in this video that I do not talk about PWCC being bought by Fanatics, and that's because I recorded this video on Saturday before that was announced. But what's interesting is that one of the merger ideas that I have is another one of the vaulting companies being bought out by another one of the big companies in the sports card hobby. So I think there is a lot of validity to that idea of these big juggernauts wanting a piece of the vaulting space as well as owning a marketplace and not having eBay take a big chunk of transactions that they want to get a hold of. So with that being said, I will throw it to the main video. Thanks again for listening and watching. What's happening YouTube? It's Simon466 Cards, and today we're going to talk about 3 mergers I want to see in the sports card hobby. For each of these scenarios, I'm going to go over the biggest assets and also the biggest weaknesses or area of growth for the companies involved and why it makes sense for the two of them to get together. So that being said, let's jump right into it. The first one I am going to talk about is COMC. Check out my cards. Fantastic website, one that I have cards on, and they are unparalleled in terms of their size and scale, in terms of how many cards they have, along with just the history that they have. I think they started about more than 15 years ago. So compared to these vaults that are being started in the last year or two, they have a much bigger size and scale. But for a bunch of their vaulted cards, there's not really a market for them in terms of people wanting to acquire them. And as well, they always need a continual inflow of new inventory to their warehouse so that they can have more transactions, both between in terms of selling and buying, right? Who do I think makes sense in terms of buying them? Well, here's a hint. They have name recognition and they have size and scale. So I'm gonna give you 2 seconds to think about who that might be. And if you guessed Collectors PSA, you'd be correct. So why I think they make sense is they require a bunch of raw cards to grade, and COMC has a bunch of raw cards that don't have a lot of value in them, and there's not as much market. But if some of them were to be graded cheaply and easily, then that would add value to those cards and make it easier to sell and move them. Second thing is COMC requires continued inflow of new inventory, and PSA and Collectors, they grade so many cards that they would definitely be able to feed in a bunch of new inventory each month to COMC. If you're on the Collectors and PSA side, the other thing is you're just an absolute juggernaut, right? You're grading 1 million cards a month or whatever it is at this point, and obviously making a ton of money off of that, I would assume. And so once you're at the point where you're maxing out the revenue, what you want to do as a company to maximize your profit is now focus on the cost side, and what can you do and how can you streamline your operations to minimize the costs. And so very straightforward example, Collectors PSA, they ship out graded cards after they've been slabbed to various people across the country, to you, me, Joe on the corner, everybody, right? What if you offered, if you send your cards to COMC, you get $1 or $2 off of your submission? That way PSA saves a ton of money. Instead of shipping 3 cards or 20 cards in one package to Joe Schmo in each state, in each city across the United States and worldwide, instead you're shipping 5,000 cards to COMC with 100 people's orders. In terms of packaging, materials, mail, that saves PSA a ton of money, and you could also pass off some of those savings to the people grading their cards. It's a win-win on both sides, and COMC is the vehicle, is the vessel to make that happen, because the cards arrive and they unpackage they unpackage a box with 20 separate packages with individual usernames attached to them, and it is just made a lot more efficient. The other thing that I think Collectors and PSA and their money that basically the capacity, the firepower that they have behind them, if they were to acquire COMC, there is one idea that Tim Getch had, that he talked about a year ago actually on Dustin the Sports Card Dad's channel, and I'm gonna play it for you. And this was
It is actually Dustin on your channel. You mentioned something about there not being any good platforms for trading.
Yes.
So I built something.
so he talked about this May of 2022. It's now May of 2023. We still haven't seen this happen. He said in this interview with Dustin that he was three quarters complete. Well, I thought this was going to be a revolutionary idea. I thought this was going to change how sports cards could be moved because they're all within a vault. Generally on COMC, if you're moving cards within a vault, you're just buying and selling with cash and dollars and cents. But if you're able to offer trades, that changes the dynamic of how COMC even operates. And so I'm just intrigued that nothing has come out of this. Maybe Tim is too busy, maybe the Knicks said, but I feel like this would be the next level up in terms of how COMC operates. And if there is some kind of reason why, whether it's lack of money, lack of whatever to make it work, it hasn't happened yet. I feel like collectors and PSA doing it, they would be able to make that happen. So that's kind of also just side note. One of my things that I really want to happen for COMC is to have them have a pure trading aspect to their website. So, anyways, that's a hope and dream of mine. It has nothing to do with this, but I think this partnership makes sense. So let me know what you think in the comments below. If you think this makes sense, I think it does, but maybe I'm missing something. Let me know. Second one, Upper Deck. Well, let's talk about them. What do they have? Well, they have the hockey license. They have some other licenses, but that's the main one. They have great history, great brands in their history, including Exquisite. And most notably, they have MJ, Gretzky, and Tiger exclusive contracts. So that's why I don't see any Michael Jordan. Oh, and I forgot. I forgot LeBron on this one too. So that's my bad. But yeah, a lot of the big names in the hobby. In terms of their biggest weaknesses, I feel like they're not keeping up. They're small and they're falling behind, and as a result, it feels like their legacy and their brand is fading. And you think about LeBron's best card, it's obviously the Exquisite, right? It's Exquisite RPAs, but that's 20 years ago, and nothing's been there to really replace it as an iconic, continue that iconic legacy. And so I feel like they need to be acquired by someone, and so. Who do you think it is? This company has new ideas and they're big size and scale. So if you guessed Fanatics, you're right. I think Upper Deck has the one remaining major sport in North America that Fanatics does not have. Fanatics is already doing a bunch of stuff with hockey in terms of their jerseys and being the official provider of the NHL. And so I think this makes sense. And in terms of Fanatics, their biggest weakness is they still want to grow, and so Upper Deck is one way to grow. They're growing all over the place, and then their lack of experience in the card space, right? And so I think Upper Deck's management and their team and their expertise could be a cheaper way to acquire some of that experience, merging it with Topps and keeping the Upper Deck brand and legacy alive. I truly believe that having Upper Deck and their history continuing on into the future with brands like Exquisite. I think it's just going to be great for the hobby. I think having that continuity is something that we should have and we should hope for, to be totally frank. So that's the second one. Again, let me know your thoughts on this merger. Third one, Beckett. Boy, oh boy. Well, I think it's pretty obvious why they need to get bought out. They have name recognition, they have history, and they have legacy. And as I've said a million times, I would love to know if you gave Dr. James Beckett truth serum, what he thinks about the company that's named after him. It's one thing to start a company and sell it off. It's another thing to have the company still be named after you, right? So as much as you might want to disassociate with it, it's still literally your last name. So to me, I kind of feel bad for him at this point. Second, but obviously the weaknesses and needs for him. Sorry, not him. For Beckett, it's poor leadership, strategy, direction. What are they doing? Nobody really knows. And so I'm going to give you 3 seconds to think about who might acquire them. So 3, 2, 1. Pencils down. CSG. CSG. They have background and legitimacy in grading, obviously more on the comic book side. And they have a great looking slab. It's very clear, it's very crisp. In terms of their biggest weaknesses, they're still a small player in the sports card space, and so obviously Beckett has that history, and I think a merger between these two would make a lot of sense. And as well, obviously, two of the head graders at CSG came from Beckett originally. So those were my three simple ideas as to what mergers I'd like to see in the hobby. I'd love to hear if you see any other mergers that you think would make sense for the hobby, or any tweaks to the ones that I have. But that's it. Short and quick video. If you like the video, please subscribe to the channel. Give me a like here. I do these videos about once a week, talking about the business side, economic side, and data side. So thank you for listening and watching, and I will talk to you all soon. Cheers.